be talking about different types of peyote stitch cuffs. You'll sometimes see this referred to as like a flat peyote stitch or something like that. We're going to cover even peyote stitches, and we're going to cover odd peyote stitches in here. And you can use these for freeform characters or for cuffs. This is a beginner level tutorial. You are going to need scissors, some kind of string. I'm using a 30-pound Omniplex fishing line, and pony beads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my two ends of the fishing line, I'm going to place them together, and we're going to put two beads, one on each string, and we're going to let those go down to the very bottom, like so. So they're just going to be side by side. Now we're going to put our two strings together, and we're going to put a green bead on here, with both strings going in the one green bead. And you even out your string and pull that to the bottom as well. You're going to get a kind of triangle effect with these beads, and that's what you're going to want. You're going to want them to lie flat next to each other. And we're separating out the string again. We're going to put two pink beads, one on each string. We're going to let those go down to the bottom. So on this one, we're going to talk about an odd peyote stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and do 5 rows of these to show you a good example. And this would be the same way that you were going to make the flat peyote stitch cuffs versus the multi-stitch, which you see most often with the Kandi cuffs, that you start with a single first. Instead of building your cuff from the top down, the way that you build these cuffs is you build them sideways instead. So they go around versus up and down. And so when you get to the point where you've finished your skeleton, or I guess the base of the cuff, which is going to be your little first section, you can see that has 5 rows, 3 pink rows, 2 green rows. What I like to do is I like to tie a knot. What you can do if you don't want to tie a knot is take one of your strings and loop it back through the pink beads at the end. But I find that sometimes this ends up hanging loose. So I personally like to tie a knot or two. And then I will hide that knot within one of the beads when I string through them. But if you don't like knots, you can always loop through one of the beads and that will keep it in place too. So I just take one of the 2 strings and put it through a pink bead and pull the knot into it. And that's going to hide your knot, and it's going to look nice and clean that way. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be building our cuff so it goes out horizontally versus vertically. So we're going to take a green bead and we're going to string up through a pink bead, like so. And we're going to take another green bead and we're going to string it up through the next pink bead. So it's exactly the same way that you would build a normal peyote stitch cuff, except for instead of starting with a single, you just start with the little alternating skeleton and you build it sideways. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a pink bead and we're going to string down through the green. So we start a new row. And we're going to add on another pink bead. And then this is where you run into a problem. When you get here, you're going to realize that you're going to have a bead and it's going to be loose. There's nothing to string into. It's going to be kind of floating, if you will. So this is a common problem that a lot of people run into when they try to do an odd peyote stitch. And they don't know where to go from here. There are 2 ways that you can solve this. You can tie a knot, which is the most obvious way. Or what you can do is you can take your string down through the bead directly below it, so it's coming out, and then you go back in through that same pink bead. And you can do this, it will stay secure, it's not going to move, and once you start stringing on the next rows, it will stay in place. It'll be completely fine working that way. Now you can always tie a knot, that's not going to hurt. You know, that's okay. But if you can possibly do this with the looping technique versus trying to tie knots, your things will also look cleaner. So now I'm going to teach you how to do the even peyote stitch. So we start our skeleton the same way. We do 2 beads, let that fall down to the end. We're going to put our 2 strings together, and we're going to add on 1 bead onto the 2 strings. And continue this until you have an even number of rows and you feel like your cuff is going to be big enough, tall enough. As you can see, I've decided to use 6 rows here. You've got the 3 yellow and you've got the 3 purple. So this is my even peyote stitch. So what I like to do is to start it off by tying a knot. This isn't necessary because you do string and up through your beads and it's going to keep it tight. But I just like to make sure that everything stays secure, especially in that skeleton. It's important to keep it tight. So I like to do it, but it's not a necessary step. So what you're going to do is you're going to add a new purple bead on. You're going to string through your yellow bead right next to it. And we pull that string tight. And then we're going to add on another purple bead. We're going to string up. And you do the same thing. One very positive thing about using an even peyote stitch versus an odd peyote stitch is there's no need for tying any knots when you come to the end of a row, because you're never running into that having that one loose bead on the end. Now sometimes it's unavoidable when you're trying to use a character or you're trying to make a mask. Sometimes you run into this problem. If you can avoid it, I would always recommend trying to use an even peyote stitch. But again, you know, sometimes you do have to use that odd. So it's always good to know kind of that looping technique or how to tie that knot so that bead stays secure. So it's up to you what you'd like to use. I'm going to say, you know, you should typically go with even. But, you know, if you really want to do odd, that's cool too. So when it comes to tying your cuff together, just make sure it's long enough to go around your wrist. And then what we're going to do is you're going to take the 2 ends, you're going to match them up together so they fit together like puzzle pieces. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to take your string and you're going to weave in between them and you're just going to tie a knot. There's no precise way or the best way to weave it together. Just weave it together as best you can and tie a knot. I prefer to hide the string. You know, that's always, you know, for the cleanest, best look. But it's really up to you and how you decide to do it. Here's a close-up of the even peyote stitch. So here's a close-up look of the odd peyote stitch. I hope that you guys found this tutorial was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them below. Please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. I put out new videos every Monday. If you'd like to check out my latest tutorial on a Kandi rose, you can click on the new video icon. If you want to see my playlist of more beginner tutorials, you can click on the playlist on the sidebar.